play as a guitar made of like, I don't know, driftwood, is it, or something?
Dynamite crate.
Oh, dynamite crate. I've got one made of like bird droppings and fucking plant leaves or something. I don't fucking know. Okay.
Okay, so we will try to record this podcast, okay, and I will try to do my usual very poor intro. Sorry about that, apologize in advance, Tad. But because I invited you, unfortunately, you will have to hear me for 2 minutes, try to introduce you. So apologize in advance.
Fuck me, it's going to be the longest 2 minutes of anybody's life.
and try to make sense with all with my French accent, by the way. So we have on the show, dear subscribers or listeners, or the two of you, we have Tad Hargrave. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes at the same time.
Oh, for fuck's sake, you don't even know your name.
we have Tad Hargrave from Marketing for Hippies. Sorry, Marketing for Hippies.
Hippies, all of it.
Are we okay? So far, so good.
Yeah, we're doing well.
And Tad, you are working with green, local, holistic, conscious entrepreneur who are struggling with their marketing. See, I'm reading straight out of my thing over there. So I did some research, and you promote a very how do I say, challenging idea. Well, challenging for me, this idea, because you promote the idea that marketing can feel good and wonderful. And for me, this is extremely challenging because I'm a bit like, talking about a comedian, I'm a bit like Bill Hicks. Do you know Bill Hicks? When he talks about...
It means Bill Hicks, by the way.
Bill, that's right. Thank you.
Just in case there's somebody thinks of Bill Hicks, IKX or something. It's Bill Hicks.
Thank you, Tim, for this. So when he talks about people working in marketing, it just the immediate response is please kill yourself, right? And this is what I have myself, is because I'm connecting marketing with money and money with greed, right? And I think you're just like me. I think when I look at your website, you're somebody who is into sustainability, green, and all these kind of things to try to make the world better. And I'm in my head, it's really, really difficult to reconcile, good with marketing or something like that. So I'm struggling with that. So I'm happy to have you here, and please try to change my mind with marketing, because unlike Tim loves marketing. Actually, I think he does more marketing than life coaching, I think. But this is...
Yeah, because I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. That's why he's on the first page of Google, by the way, if you research, because he's good at marketing. Anyway, that's my poor intro. So do whatever you want with this, but I would like to... I would like you to...
He is Larry King, isn't he? I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, so perfect. Let me sip my beer now, And can you explain me this, How can you make this experience of marketing wonderful and good and feel good?
Yeah, sure. I know the Bill Hicks routine you're referring to, and it's... I guess, first of all, I'm always glad when anyone is critical of marketing or critical of capitalism. I'm concerned when people aren't, when people raise up these issues around money or the economy or marketing. I'm glad. It's a relief that people are thinking about it, because we live in a culture and an economy that is destroying everything. And so the idea of sort of adding fuel to the fire by making the marketing better of these things is terrible. I heard somebody define green marketing as trying to make green things seem normal, not normal things seem green. It'd be great if we could walk into a grocery store and it was like, everything's organic, and if you want to buy for a premium stuff grown with pesticides, you can, in this small specialty boutique section, you can get that there, but that the normal thing is actually the healthier thing. And I think marketing feels terrible because people know they're being lied to all the time. They know it's bullshit. They know that it's exaggerations and hype. But I think underneath a lot of that, there's a real, especially when we move into the world of kind of service providers, life coaches, holistic practitioners, people who do permaculture, that kind of stuff.
Can I just interrupt you for just 1 second? Because we have the connection is cutting a little bit. Can you just turn off your camera if you can? Just I think the connection will be a little bit, will go a little bit better if you don't mind. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, please go on.
There we go. But I think if we dig underneath why marketing feels bad, often I think why it feels bad is because there's an agenda, this hidden agenda that never gets talked about but is present all the time in marketing. And the agenda is to get people to buy. The agenda is to get people to say yes, to convert their no into a yes, to overcome their objections, to get the sale, to close the deal. That's the kind of, in sales anyways, that's the bottom line agenda of it. And that agenda feels terrible. People know that that's why they're being lied to. They know that when they're meeting with a salesperson, that's what's going on. And when it feels good is when there's this shift to not having no agenda, but having the agenda to get to the truth, and the truth of is it a fit or not. And that seems kind of fluffy on the surface until you realize what that means is you actually have to be really clear about who is a fit for you and who isn't a fit for you. And that's actually the heavy lifting in marketing, is that kind of clarity. Because when people are clear about that, marketing stops being a seduction process and a convincing process, and it starts being more of a kind of filtering process where you're actively turning people away who aren't a good fit, referring them to other people if it's a better fit, and being so clear about what you're doing that people who are a fit would recognize it immediately and be more likely to say yes. But what you see instead is a lot of fuzziness, a lot of people trying to be everything to everybody. Oh yeah, I can help you with any problem. And that isn't credible. And so that kind of hype that is part of what turns people off, I think, around marketing too. So that's my sense of it.
Mm. And it, to me, what I understand by that is authenticity, right? It's something, an idea that you promote yourself, I think, is how you can become authentic.
Yeah.
And selling this authenticity, right? Is it something along this line, or?
Not exactly. No. I mean, it's like as I think Mark Twain said it. Authenticity is everything. Once you've learned how to fake that, you've got it made. But no, I don't think it's the selling authenticity.
No.
Or selling ourselves. It's just just actually being authentic. I'm not trying to sell that. I'm not trying to convince people that I'm authentic, because I feel like that kind of convincing goes back to the same agenda that has marketing feel uncomfortable in the first place. There's nothing like more uncomfortable than being around somebody who's trying to convince you how real and genuine they are. Mm. It's like, yeah, I know, I'm so real. All those other people aren't real, but I'm really real. That's like, if you were so real, like, why do you keep trying to convince me of stuff? So yeah, I don't think we're trying to sell that or sell ourselves. I think that's where the other place you can go in marketing is like, you're just trying to sell yourself. But it's like, I just wish we would stop selling stuff to people and just start. There's a book I read called Monopolize Your Marketplace, and it had a really interesting take on marketing that I think we tend to look at marketing as, okay, well, the goal of marketing or sales is to get the sale. And if we look at marketing through that lens, well, then if I meet with somebody to do a pitch, or I do a pitch to a group and not many of them sign up, I've failed. Or if I sell something and somebody asks for a refund, that's a failure. But in my understanding, that has nothing to do with the success or failure of it directly. And they submitted, there were 3 roles of marketing. Instead of just one role of getting people to buy, there were 3 roles. The first one was just to get their attention. So people who are going to be a good fit for you, just like, do they notice you at all? Number 2 is sort of filtering and establishing, is it a fit? Helping them through the decision-making process. So if it is a fit, they know that it's a fit at least. And if it's not a fit, they know that too. And then 3rd is to lower the risk of taking the first step. Because even if it's a fit for people, even if people get that you could help them, it's still a bit of a risk to take the first step. And so we want the easier and gentler we can make that for people, the more likely it is to happen. So if we can get their attention, establish if it's a fit, lower the risk. To me, if I do that, and somebody's like, oh, it isn't a fit for me, and they walk away, that's not failure. That's actually success. And that doesn't mean, there's just a distinction to make between, like, yes, as a business owner, I need to make sales. That's true. Where it gets sticky is where I turn that into, I need you to buy personally. You know, it's like, I need Olivier to buy from me right now. That's where the pressure comes from. But if instead I just take responsibility as an entrepreneur, it's like, okay, I need sales. You know, I need a certain amount of money per month. Let me create a strategy that doesn't require me to put pressure on anybody, that doesn't require me to be sitting desperately across from somebody needing that sale so bad. And sometimes what that means is people, you know, when they start a business, they actually start too soon. They have a job and they shouldn't have left that job in the first place because now they're desperate and they think, oh, I'm just going to jump into this and just, you know, make millions. Yeah. But what it puts them in is this very vulnerable, desperate place where they're legitimately needy. And then they put that pressure on the people that they're trying to sell to. And so for a lot of people, they kind of need to phase it in with their business and to know that growing a solid business, even if you're focusing on it really hard and doing a lot of things right, it's going to be 18 months to 3 years before you can sustain yourself. And so if we know that walking in, it's a little bit better.
So you just remove, you know, so it's actually you know, not mind blowing, but it's a bit of question because you even remove the verb selling from everything, you know. So you're not selling yourself, you're just showing yourself. This is what you meant, what you're saying, grabbing the attention. Is it something?
Yeah, well, you know, it's there's a distinction to make between marketing and sales, and in my mind, marketing is the kind of process of getting their attention, and especially when it's a higher ticket item, when it's going to cost more, there may need to be a one-on-one conversation, and that's what I would call selling, when you're actually having a conversation where they're going to be making a decision one way or the other. But still the same principles apply. You know, there was what was his name? He's one of the great business minds. It'll come to me, but his line was, the purpose of marketing is to make selling irrelevant or redundant. You know, that we should be making it so clear what this is and what it is and who it's for, who it's not for, and whether it's a fit, and making lowering the risk and you know, easing people in so that if it's fit, it's really easy to say yes, and if it's not a fit, it's easy to walk away. So that we don't need to put all this pressure on sales, because what happens, I think, so often, and it's not that selling isn't a skill that it needs to be in there, but there's also a whole different orientation to that kind of one-on-one conversation. And that conversation is, I don't even know why I would ever want to sit down with somebody one-on-one if I didn't think they were a fit and they didn't think they were a fit. To me, the only point of having a conversation at that point is they're like, I know I'm a fit for this. I would love to work with you. Or like, I know you could help me. I don't know if I'm going to hire you, but I think I like what you've got enough to sit down and talk about it. But I see so many, you know, it's like the classic multi-level marketing sales thing where it's like, hey, you seem really cool. Let's go for coffee. And then that coffee turns into a pitch for Amway. And then, you know, people feel betrayed and that feels really gross because it's not authentic. It's not real. Versus, you know, and the reality is, if you look at the stats on how people hear about businesses in the first place, it's almost always word of mouth. It's always, you know, from a friend, and it's, you know, 50% or more of the reason that people buy anything has to do with word of mouth and hearing from people that we trust. So then what that means is the bottom line in marketing is, you know, it's like if you're gonna, I don't know, get a new mechanic. These days, we just post on Facebook, like, hey, who knows a good mechanic? And if we hear the same name a few times from friends or somebody we really trust recommends, we just say, okay. So what that means is marketing is actually fundamentally about doing a really good job with the people you have. But you know, it's like, it's impossible to do a good job with somebody who's not a fit. You know, like if I was doing a presentation and I was like, hey, everyone, come to my workshop. And I do this amazing pitch and I use all the tactics. I tell them it's a $10,000 course, and then I drop the price down to at the end it's only $500, and they're like, wow, I'm really saving a lot of money. And I say, you know, for the first 27 people to run to the back of the room. You get a special deal. And then people see everyone running, and and I use all these tactics. But then I get, let's say, 100 people at the workshop, and maybe 60% of them are not a fit at all. They shouldn't even be in the room. It's not the right time for them for that workshop. That means they're going to leave pissed or just having had a mediocre experience, which means 60% of my word of mouth is not that great. Versus if I filtered, and maybe instead of 100, I only got, 50 people or 40, but they're all a perfect fit. And they run out and they rave about it. It's better. So to me, it starts with having people who are fit and then doing such a good job with them that they tell everyone that's the most. And yes, there are ways you can encourage people to spread the word and make it easier for them to spread the word, which is really important. But at the end of the day, it's like, are you doing a good job for people? Are you really helping people? Because if you are, the word does spread with that. It just takes a bit more time, but it's more solid that way.
Well, Tim, you need to stop doing this thing, with your price reduction then, for your workshops,
I've made 2 pages of notes. So sit down, grab some popcorn, maybe a beer or whatever. First of all, that sounds like a Peter Drucker or Tom Peters quote, and I could be wrong on both those, but I like the quote. Second of all, I definitely agree. I worked in sales for 20 years. I was fortunate in some respects, not in others, to work for one particular business where we had literally sales training every week. Every Monday for an hour, we would have some form of sales training, plus, sort of condensed 2-3 week training courses every now and then. And, to me, there's a lot of books out there about closing a sale. The way you close a sale is to say, do you want to sign up? If you're needing to use tricks to close a sale, it means you haven't done your job properly in the first place. You haven't explained the benefit to the person that you're selling to, and you're having to use some form of manipulation at the end to get them to sign up. So I'm fully in agreement with you there. I think 50% word of mouth, I think that really does vary from industry to industry. I know, I wouldn't say I know for a fact, but I would say that's very difficult in the life coaching industry because a lot of people still are almost embarrassed. I've had clients say to me, please don't ring me at home in case my husband or my wife or my kids answer and they know I'm working with a life coach. And
especially
I don't
with you.
Mainly with me. It's okay if you pretend to be a real life coach, but don't say who you are. So I think that, I think you're right. I think when, if I was looking for, it's a little bit different for me because I live in a foreign country where I don't know as many people, but, one of the first things I do if I need some form of tradesman or whatever is ring up a couple of people I know and do you know anybody that you can recommend? And I agree with that. I don't, it's slightly off topic, but I was at the dog park about a year ago and this pit bull went mental attacking other dogs. And I've got 3 Dobermans and they can stand up for themselves. But this guy, and I went up to this guy and he was a really nice guy. I said, your dog seems a little bit aggressive. And he was stressed, which is quite nice. He wasn't like not bothered. And he said, I bought it on Craigslist. And I'm saying fuck me. This is the pit bull capital of the world for fighting dogs. And you went and bought a dog with no history on Craigslist. That's where I would want to say to somebody, give me a list of breeders that you recommend, where etc. So I think that does vary, and I think I think you make a good point, and I'm I'm not agreeing with you, but I think to say, it's this percentage or that percentage. Well, I think if it's a dentist, I think it's probably like 80 or 90%. Most people want to hear from somebody that they've had a great dentist. I think if it's like a T-shirt manufacturer or whatever, people are just like, I'll just bang it on Google and I'll do this or whatever. But I think for what you're doing, I agree. And I hope that makes sense. It's just that I don't like to throw figures out there that are very general saying, 50% of your work's going to come. Because I know, I've been coaching for 10 years, and probably 15% of my clients come from referral. I know that's mainly because I'm shit.
Yeah, that's right.
But even so, you think people would feel a little bit obliged to recommend.
Because we are polite. This is what you.
Yeah, just that.
He's a good guy, He's not very good, but try to help him, Okay.
Exactly. That's what I would say with that. And the other thing with asking for money back, I mean, there's something called. I'm sure you're familiar with, post-purchase rationalization, where we buy a high-value product and then we believe that because we paid a lot of money for it, that it's a value. And I think a lot of marketers use this heavily. Very brief story, and I will try and keep it brief because I'm talking more than you are, which is really pretty common. But I bought a product by possibly the most famous copywriter in the world, whose name rhymes with Denedy, and his first name rhymes with Ban, but I'm not going to say who he is. And he talked about a time where he worked in Los Angeles in the late 1980s, and at the time he sold rape alarms, and there was a rapist on the loose, a serial rapist. And he said, he was talking to this group, he said, I went to bed every night praying to God the police didn't find this guy because I was making so much money. And I immediately took the CD, as it was at the time, this is about 7 or 8 years ago now, out, packaged it back and sent it back and asked for my money back. But most people don't do that because they tend to think, oh, well, it's, it was a joke, or it's my fault, or I bought it, or they'll rationalise with themselves. I'm making sense, yeah, I mean, by the way, I agree with pretty much everything you've said, and I like your outlook. But I also think that I don't know what I think. What do I think?
You think?
Yeah.
Okay, please try to make sense of it because I didn't understand.
Well, I think the point is that I do think there's a place for being genuine and honest within marketing. I think when you're doing something like that, you're basically undermining the entire industry for people that want to do a good job and just market a product that they genuinely think can help people. And I turn down at least 1 in 3 people that contact me because I don't think I can help them. So that I guess that was the point I was trying to make. Ramble. Have I filled the podcast now?
It's a wrap. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, yeah, there are a few,
what was it?
There's a few threads there. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. What percentage for different industries? If somebody is like a sex coach, it's a taboo subject that their clients are probably not thrilled to tell everyone that, that they've hired this, or they're seeing a sex therapist. It's going to be they're just not going to be posting it on Facebook all the time, probably, or dating coaches or those kinds of things. Because what guy wants to admit?
Or barber in my case, hairstylist in my case. I wouldn't want to. This is the guy you want to hire. This guy because this is what he did for me.
Yeah. So when it's taboo, there's going to be that, and the it was interesting when you're saying about the. So different industries will have different things, but even like with T-shirts, to me, there's still this dynamic of word of mouth of like, well, how did you even hear about the website where the T-shirts are being sold? Or how did you even hear about the farmer's market or the craft show that was selling the T-shirts? And sometimes it is just accidental. Sometimes we just stumble across these things. And I find I'll ask in my workshops, I say, how did you hear about this? And raise your hand if you heard about it because you're on my list, and there's a certain percent. Let's say raise your hand if you heard from a friend. Almost everybody else and said, now if you didn't hear from a friend, raise your hand. And every once in a while, genuinely is a random thing, like Facebook just happened to show my thing because we had friends of friends, which is still kind of word of mouth, but maybe not really. Or they saw a poster randomly that got put up at an organic grocery store, and they saw that and came. But most of the time, even the people who said, no, I didn't hear from a friend, they'll say, "Oh no, yeah, well, a friend of mine posted it on Facebook," and it's like, yeah, that's still word of mouth. So it's for so many things, I think we don't even realize how pervasive the whole word of mouth thing is, or even how it can hurt our business. You know, because if we do a bad job and people complain on something, the word goes out. One of my colleagues, George Cow, he talked about how he had this term sustainable marketing, and I like the way he defined it. He says sustainable marketing means you look at any marketing decision you're going to make, any tactic or strategy you'll use, and you ask yourself, what would the impact be on the marketplace if everybody used this tactic? And if everyone approached it this way. And so, you know, we don't actually have to wonder too hard because, you know, given Olivier's introduction, we see the impact of it. When people use manipulative, dishonest tactics, when people are pushy or aggressive with it, you get the kind of introduction that Olivier gave at the beginning of this podcast, you know, and that people feel terrible about it. And to me, it's such an important thing that when I just wrote a blog post about a kind of contrasting courting versus seduction, and that so much of marketing, I guess in a more sustainable way, comes down to acknowledging that there's more than just this one sale that's at stake. There's more than just our reputation as a business that's at stake or our bottom line. There's the marketplace as a whole that's at stake. And when we conduct ourselves poorly, it's contributing to something that is hurting everybody. Just like, you know, and man, I've read a lot of the dating and pickup books, so it's like I'm aware of what I speak. But if guys use manipulative tactics with women, it creates trouble for all the other guys who are being genuine and authentic. You know, and a similar thing, I would say, Tim, to what you said, you know, like the closing technique is like, do you want to buy? Hey, do you want to sign up? There's a very straightforward question here. Or my colleague Ari Galper, he had a great one. He would ask people when it got to that point in the conversation, he'd just say, so where do you think we should go from here? And just left the ball in their court because that is their decision anyways. And similarly, you know, if you're dating, if there's all these manipulative tactics to get something, the truth is you might get it. You know, if you're a guy, you go to one of these things, you might go home with the woman and spend the night with her, but maybe she's going to regret it. Maybe it's not going to feel good. Maybe that's going to contribute to her own mistrust of men and then give trouble for the other guys that she meets down the road who just have good, you know, intentions. And similarly, you can use the marketing tactics. And a guy named Simon Sinek, I don't know if either of you know, but he wrote, yeah, and he talked in his book Start With Why about, he's like, these tactics, a lot of the marketing tactics we hate, they work. So, but what they do is they get people to buy, but they don't create loyalty, they don't create trust. They'll get you to, we can get you to vote for a candidate, but we can't get you to trust them and to be loyal to them and to volunteer for them. You know, it's like in the States right now, Bernie Sanders is running for president. And Hillary Clinton has more money, but she doesn't have that same degree of enthusiasm, I think, that Bernie Sanders has right now, or is growing from the people who are getting familiar with him. And, you know, I'm sure in France and the UK there's similar corollaries of politicians who just people trusted them, you know, and were willing to volunteer and spend a lot of time unpaid just to help them because they believe so much in them. And we can't, manipulative tactics will never get that. But ultimately long term, that pays back so much more and is so much less effort than or a different kind of effort anyways. You know, the effort is going into taking care of your clients and being good at what you do rather than convincing people that you're good at what you do.
Yeah, well, I personally definitely agree with that. Most of my client calls, and I did 2 consults I'm talking about, I did 2 yesterday, and at the end of it I just said, look, I don't even want your answer now. Go away and think about it. If you need to talk to other life coaches, think about it. If you think we're a great fit, give me a call back. If you don't, then don't, or shoot me an email and saying you found somebody else. And the reason for that is it's not, you know, I'm not trying to take the higher ground necessarily. It's just like it's a win-win, because if they want to work with me and I want to work with them, then it's far more likely that we're going to succeed. Yeah. And if I force them, and I worked in sales for 20 years, and and I sold at a very high level in terms of value, and working through contracts and stuff for a long period of time, and understanding the structure of sales. And you were talking about before attention filtering and then lower risk of so there's the AIDA in sales, which is attention, interest, desire, action, where you move through those. Every sale moves through those steps, and you can get a sale. But to me, the biggest buzz in sales was always getting the reorder, because when you got the reorder, you knew you'd done your job properly in the first place. And I think to me, with clients, it's like, I don't want to use sales tactics to bring you on board, because it's just going to feel like hard work. And you're going to feel like you're being sold to. And people hate being sold to. They love to buy and hate being sold to. I know it's a cliche, but it's true. And maybe I'm fortunate in some respects. So I'm not sure if I did this when I first started, if I'm going to be honest. Maybe I was a little bit more hard sell. And I honestly can't remember. I honestly can't remember. But now it's kind of like, I want to work with people that work with me, and I think you've got the same, the same ethos, the same approach. It's kind of like, this is who I am, this is what I can offer. If that fits what you want, then brilliant. If it doesn't, then that's fine as well, because you can move on and find somebody who it does work with. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, and it's the two thoughts that come to me. Or one is, you said how satisfying it is when somebody does the reorder, but I also want to lift up how much more profitable it is. There's all those stats about it just takes so much more money and effort to get a new client than to keep an existing one.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, just if we're even to look at it from a very cynical business money, bottom line, if you take care of your existing customers and they come back again and again and again, that's actually where the profitability in a business comes from. The reality is, marketing doesn't make any money. Marketing makes nobody any money at all. What makes money in a business is your business model, is your business structure. Do you have a good sales funnel? Do you have just a good structure to it? And if it's not making you money, it's almost certainly down to the structure and the business model more than the marketing, often. Because you can market really well and have a shitty business model, and you're just going to go broke faster because the structure doesn't work. So there's that, and to me it's also not necessarily that it has to be this lackadaisical, work with me or not, I don't care. It doesn't mean that you can't have a salesy vibe. Like some people have a real like, hey, come on, buy from me, hey buddy, come on, and yet they're very lovable and they're very sincere, and at the end of the day they really just do want what's best for the other person. And I've noticed and sometimes I even feel more safe around those people because I'm like, oh, you're being so real. There's no guile in it. It's a very genuine pitch. They're a huckster, but they're an honest huckster, and I can go with that. But yeah, ultimately, I was at a workshop. My colleagues Suzanne Palter Barnes and Jeffrey Van Dyke. You got your dog there?
It's okay.
It's okay, mate.
It's just
okay,
the Doberman. It's the hoof.
My Doberman. I've got 3 Dobermans. One knows how to open my office door, so she brings the nose down. He brings it, and then they all come in. So sorry about that.
That's all right. I was at this workshop. My colleagues Suzanne Falter Barnes and Jeffrey Van Dyke, and on the Saturday night they did their kind of pitch for their next level coaching programs, which is a fairly typical thing. But what I loved was, number one, they didn't stand on the stage and say, "Hey, do we have your permission to talk about some of the next level programs?" Because that question is almost always insincere. They actually don't care what people are going to answer, and it's not like anyone in the audience is going to be like, actually, I'd rather just have another hour of content, and they're going to say, "Oh, okay, I just won't share then." So they didn't ask. They were just like, so we have had people ask us, and so we're going to take an hour now and share. So that's what we're doing right now. And I was just like, thank you for just doing it. But then they did their presentation, and it was very much from just like, here are the different levels, here's who it's for, here's who it's not for, you know. But then at the end they said, we are not taking orders tonight. You can't sign up tonight because this is a lot of money and we want you to sleep on it. We want you to think about it. And we do need orders by 11 a.m. tomorrow. But you can't do it tonight. And I loved it. I just loved the way that it took the pressure out of it. And I feel like, and this is something I got from a colleague of mine, Ari Galper, who is a website, unlockthegame.com. And his stuff in sales is the best I ever came across. And because his understanding was that the reason sales feel so bad is because there's a sales pressure. And the sales pressure is created by the agenda to get the sale. But so that if sales pressure is what kind of kills it, then our goal in selling and our skill set should not be about trying to get people to buy. Our skill set should primarily be around how do we diffuse and reduce pressure? Because even if you're being genuine, even if you genuinely just have the best intentions to find the truth of if it's a fit, people, if they see you as a salesperson, will still experience pressure because they will imagine that you're trying to sell them. You know, if they put you in that, you know, yeah.
So Tad, let me ask you this question. Do you really think that them saying, we don't want you to buy now, you've got to buy by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, isn't an incredibly intelligent sales tactic?
I think it's, I mean, yeah, they were putting a limiter on it by saying 11, you know, because it could have just been like, well, sign up whenever. So there is a limiter. They are saying we do want it by a certain period of time. And I can't remember what rationale they gave for that, if any.
Well, I'll tell you what rationale, because it's incredibly intelligent. It's incredibly subtle and smart marketing technique, which is what that is. That's not a backing off and saying what I'm saying to people, get back to me when you can. Yeah. And I think, you know, and you know, I know I'm challenging you a little bit now, and feel free to push back. The difference with life coaching is it's not an exact science. And you can probably, to a certain extent, as a marketer, guarantee certain results. I know guarantee is probably a stretch, but you know, it's more about testing. It's more accurate. You know, when as life coaches we're dealing with people that we have no idea what the response is going to be, and I have no idea. I can get a good feeling for people, so I never feel like I have the ability to say I can promise anything, other than I'll turn up on time, presuming I'm not sick or whatever, and I'll do my best. But I just think that to say we're not taking orders now, 11 o'clock, is like my technique, but way cleverer in terms of that is almost high pressure to me, but in a really passive-aggressive way.
Yeah, got it. I mean, I think the whole conversation about do we put limiters on things in terms of, you know, like if you have a sale, anytime we have a sale of something, you know, that we're putting some sort of a limiter on something. We're saying 50% off if you buy by this date, or 50% off for the first 100 people. There's some sort of a limiter, which is creating an artificial sense of scarcity, you know, that isn't real. And sometimes there is legitimate scarcity. You know, Robert Cialdini in his book, Influence, talked about, you know, when, so for example, I'm going to be releasing at some point, when I finish it, a home study version of something called the niching spiral, helping people figure out their niche. And my thinking at this point was I'm going to release the first 100 at a pretty steep discount from what I'm ultimately going to sell it at. Because I want feedback. Because it was fun. I was talking with one of my colleagues, and I said, "Yeah, I'll release 100 so I can get feedback to see if it's any good." And he said, "You mean to see how awesome it is?" And I was like, "No, I don't know if it's any good. Nobody's gone through it. I mean, I like it, but I don't know." So sometimes, you know, there's a legitimate, like there are only so many spaces in the room. There are coaching group programs where it's like you only want to take a certain number of people in. And so there's a real scarcity. And then there's the manufactured scarcity. And so in the case of that workshop, I don't know how much of it was real scarcity, how much of it was manufactured. Because sometimes there's also like, we're starting these group coaching programs on this date, so we need to have everyone in by that date in order to... So in this case, I can't speak to it. I think there probably was a certain level of manufactured scarcity. But even that I'm okay with personally, as long as people are upfront about it. what I can't stand is when there's a like. I was at a workshop where it was like the first 27 people at the back of the room get a deal, and she said it as if it was a spontaneous idea. And when there's this contrived, or there's this, you've probably seen these on the internet where videos where it's like, the video you're about to watch is full of powerful information about how you can achieve XYZ results. In fact, it's so dangerous that certain interests want it taken off the internet as soon as possible. So watch the whole video now. And it's such bullshit. Or like, there was this one Robert Allen sales letter.
I think I've watched that. But I know what you say. Yeah, go on, carry on. Sorry.
I shouldn't have named him. We'll call him Schmarbert
Callan.
But anyway, but the sales letter had a clock ticking at the top of it. Like 24-hour countdown. Like you have to.
That's quite common now, actually.
And it's so terrible. And then I refreshed the page. I went away from it. I refreshed it, and the clock restarted.
yeah.
And so I just, so this kind of there is because I think the danger, again, going back to the impact on the marketplace of using an artificial sense of scarcity, is that it creates fear, that we're just always scared we don't have enough, that we're always panicked, we're always making panicked decisions. And so the idea, I'm a big fan of the idea of like, if you want, my style would definitely be more, look, there's a lot of free stuff on my website, check it out. If you like it, reach out to me. And I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but if that was more in my business model, it would be like, check out my stuff. You probably want to buy some products first. Yeah, and then if you really wanted to sign up for long-term, let's talk about it. And then at the end, I'd just be like, so where do you think we should go from here? And whatever they say, I'd be like, great, let's do that. And to me, that also doesn't take away that sometimes we hear no when people aren't saying no. Sometimes it's they're just wrestling. They would like to do it, and they're kind of wrestling with it. And we can engage in that conversation still. Like, the conversation doesn't have to stop when they're like, I'm not sure I can afford it. And there can be a collapsing of like, totally. Well, that's fine. Let's just, there can still be, I think, a way to engage with integrity, with a lot of care, a conversation around those things that we would typically call objections that we're supposed to overcome, which is a whole ontological world. There's this whole worldview of like that we have in this culture that limits they confine us, and we're supposed to overcome them constantly. And that's this whole culture, the economy, trying to overcome the limits of our body, push ourselves further. In pickup stuff, if the girl says no, here's all these tactics to get beyond no to get her in bed, and it's basically rape. And same in marketing and sales, there's a similar attitude. But that doesn't mean that there can't be honest conversations when resistance comes up, or fear comes up, or they're not sure, or they're wondering, or they feel triggered. Sometimes that can actually create the most wonderful conversation that may not result in them buying, or might. But I think sometimes, and I don't feel particularly skilled in that. I don't feel like that whole one-on-one sales conversation is really my thing. But I know, like my colleague Mark Silver with Heart of Business.
What? Mark Silver?
You know Mark Silver?
Yeah, very well.
Nice.
I mean, really well.
So who is Mark Silver? I don't know him.
He's Art of Business. Mark's one of the nicest guys I know on the internet. Is a lovely guy. We used to talk a lot on Twitter, and we both kind of dropped off Twitter a little bit, and I don't speak to him as often now, but I've guest posted on his blog. And he's a super guy. I love him to bits.
It's funny. I just had a Skype with him for about an hour last week. He's just moved to Ithaca, New York. I don't know if you knew.
Right.
And
please give him my regards, because I really got a lot of time for Mark. I think he's a great guy.
Yeah, and so he's really good at the sales, that one-on-one, and has a lot more to say about it than I do. And so there's still a way to have the whole term heart-based is like so burned out and overused. But I mean, Mark, it's like, and he really brings it of like... Yeah,
absolutely.
So you can still have that tough conversation, and you don't have to just be like, well, whatever, just, you probably don't want to buy from me, so I'm going to leave, and, doing that. Yeah, so it's funny. It's just, to me, it keeps coming back to this. What is my intention here? Is my intention to get the sale, or is my intention to see if there's a fit? But also, my bigger intention of, like, what is it that I'm feeding by the way that I'm living? What is it that I'm feeding by the way I'm interacting with people in the marketplace? But, you know, there's the author Martin Prechtel, who's a Guatemalan shaman, writes a lot about how the way that we use our words, the way that we make beautiful things with our hands is like, he talks about is like feeding the holy in nature. And there's something bigger than us that we feed through, or starve through, our actions. And just that the way we live, and I think it's very much the way that we market and sell and do business, leaves something very important starving in our culture and in the world. And there's a way to engage. And to me, Mark, I mean, it's just, I'm sending him business all the time, because the way he does it is so beautiful. And I think it's like, it's not just honoring the person he's with, it's not just creating a better vibe in the marketplace, but it's feeding something even bigger that feeds all of us. And I think it's just something that we don't think about a lot, but I think it's important that we start thinking about it.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, there's a couple of things, you know, for me as a coach, when I say to people, you know, go and think about it, it's genuinely because I want them to want to work with me. And I you know, if I was training a salesperson and I saw them talking, when I'm training other life coaches, I say, this is what I do. You shouldn't do this. You know, I'm full all the time, and I can pick and choose a little bit of who I work with. And that's more through luck than judgment, because I've been doing it for so long. And it's not really good sales tactics. And you're right. You know, what I said to salespeople is, if you believe in your product, you've got a duty of care to make sure that your client understands the value of what you've got to offer, whether it's a service, a product, you know, or whatever. So for me, for another life coach, it would be, if you're confident in your abilities, then you've got to get that across to people that you think you can help them. So I'm a little bit laissez-faire with it too. I'm going all French on Olivier there. I thought I'd throw that in for him, laissez-faire. You know, because in a large extent, I agree with you. And sometimes what I'm doing now is in some respects the antithesis of what I used to do when I was in sales. But I also think there's an element you can't sell without fear. You know, all sales are undermined by fear. Maybe the fear that I'm hungry and I need a Snickers bar. It may be the fear that if I don't get this person to help me with my marketing, my business is going to be fail. It may be the fear. You know, whatever it is, there's a fear that undermines it. And as salespeople, it's our job really to expose that fear and then offer the solution. And that sounds really cynical to a lot of people, but it kind of isn't. You know, I wouldn't go to my dentist if I hadn't got the fear of getting toothache. You know, I wouldn't go to the supermarket if I hadn't got the fear that I was going to be hungry later on at night or want to drink or whatever. You know, I wouldn't go to the fear. I wouldn't watch a TV program if it wasn't the fear that I'd miss out and people would be talking. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think
Olivier, you sound... Sorry, go on.
No, I was thinking about what you're saying about the fear. And so what would be the fear behind, you know, go to the coach? You know, when you promote to be the best... but you can be, you know, reach your objectives and stuff like this. What would be behind this?
The fear that I will live a life where I haven't fulfilled my potential or I haven't achieved what you know, nobody fully fulfills the potential. Let's be honest about it.
I understand, but you try to better yourself. So you think that wanting to better the self is less than the fear of not achieving something, of not having...
Fear is almost all. You know, we're hardwired for fear to be a bigger driving motivator. Now, I'm not saying there aren't cases where people can overcome that, you know, but for the most part, our hardwiring is fear takes precedence over pleasure. Now, yes, of course, there are examples of that, you know, counter examples of that. But for them, you know, it's like we've evolved through being aware of fear,
right.
You know, being aware that noise we hear behind us in the forest, a tiger or another tribe or whatever. Yeah. Whereas if we don't chase the herd, well, we may go hungry for a week or whatever. And that, you know, the brain doesn't re-change itself. You know, when we developed a prefrontal cortex, it didn't like drop everything else. It just dumped it on top. And that's still driving a lot of our irrational behavior. And that's what's behind fear, and for me, it's sad that it's like that, or I don't know if sad's the right word, and I'd like to get Tad's feedback on this, but it's kind of but that's how it is. We have to tap into people. Well, what are you worried about missing out on before we can sell them something? Because even when you look at things where people are going to gain something, it's still the fear that they won't gain that really drives the decision making for the most part. So
yeah, I suppose what that brings up for me is that the fears that people have are very real. And this idea there's Byron Katie talks about there's two fears in life. One that we won't get what we want. The second that we'll lose something that we have. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's no joke when we've got something we're scared about. And because it's so deep for people, to me the question is like, if we look at that and say, okay, here's the reality. Humans are primarily heavily driven by fear, and especially in this culture that has us stressed and anxious, probably even more so. Yeah. Then to me, there's this question is like, what is that asking of us in business, as entrepreneurs, as salespeople? And I think what it's asking of us is to tread extremely carefully and to be extremely faithful to what's being entrusted in us. Because people, when they're scared, are so vulnerable. People are very easy to manipulate when they're scared. You can see this in religion. You can see this in business. And when, at the sales trainings where they pry into the fear, and it's like, hey, yes, it's $10,000 to sign up, but don't you think you're worth it? And their whole fear is worth. And so we can't do that. We can't take advantage of people in that way. And I think, Tim, what you're saying about to go think about it and you just let me know is a sign of an immense regard for that person and an immense sign of respect of like, hey, you're an adult. You know where to find me. If you want to sign up, you'll sign up. And so that just seems really big to me. But it was interesting, Tim, when you said in the beginning the fear gets in the way of sales. The way I heard it initially was it's our fears that get in the way of sales. And that feels very true for me, that if I'm sitting with someone and what's running the show is I'm scared they're going to say no, that will hijack the whole conversation. And so it feels like there's so much for us as salespeople of like, yes, we can look at their fears, but it's so important to look at ours of like, yeah, what if they say no? What if they don't like me? What if they go with one of my competitors? Because as long as we're scared of that and that fear is unconscious and running things, we're going to manipulate, period. Yeah. And if I can really let that go, question it, whatever you say, it's, I'm actually going to be present in the conversation because I'm no longer scared. And, there's this, I don't know why this is coming up for me, but there's a community in Portugal called Tamara. And it's a community, kind of like a free love community. But their perspective on love and relationships is this, free love in the 60s kind of meant love free of responsibility. And so you had a lot of STDs and a lot of unwanted, your kids out of wedlock and a lot of,
gifts.
People having sex in the bushes and getting poison ivy everywhere.
Oh, Tim, do you want the address?
So they said, but they said what we're about is not love. We're still about free love, but it's not love free of responsibility. It's love free of fear. That's what we want. And so how do we have... So they kind of see themselves as like it's a scientific experiment around love and like what can we learn about this and learn in our own experiences. And so there's a similar thing, I think, going on with sales. It's like, how do we have conversations in business that are free of fear, where we're not bringing our fear into it, but also that their own fear is diffused and honored. And to me, it's one response to somebody's fear is like, great, this is a resource that I can use to get something I want. And another way is just empathy for the human experience. It's like, yeah, you're scared you're going to hit the end of your life and have a life without any meaning. And and feel totally unsatisfied, and like you didn't give back any youth to this world. You didn't give back anything after receiving your whole life from the world and being carried, and you didn't contribute back. And that's, and so I feel like there's a way to hold it where it's just like the experience they have is like, I get you.
That's a great point.
And they feel really gotten. And it has nothing to do with me trying to convince them, but it's just like creating this safety, which was what Ari Galper kept talking about. It was just this, diffusing the pressure, but not. And this is where it gets so tricky. Is like not using all the empathy and diffusing the pressure so that I can then get the sale. It's like this can't be subsumed and subverted by the agenda to get the sale, because then it feels even more gross. And we've all done it. We've all had times in our life where we wanted something from somebody, and so we were the nice guy, and we were whatever, and we were just there and listening, and we used that to get something, and we took advantage of somebody. And we've all done it, and we've all had people do it to us, and it's a deeper betrayal, because it's like, wow, I made myself vulnerable. And then
I agree. I should never have bought those roofies. That was totally irresponsible of me.
So listen to you.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, listen to you, Tad. You have these values, right? I can hear that you have these noble values about respect and care and empathy and compassion and this is why what we do. This is why you have this Marketing for Hippies business, but. Hippies,
For anybody listening, it's Marketing for Hippies.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
People be Googling MIPPIes. What are MIPPIes? And maybe they'll...
That's fine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
fuck you. No, that's fine. I love you too. I'm full of compassion for you too, my friend. I love you. I love you all. But don't you think that you kind of alone preaching that, or is there? Well, from what I see, I came across you because of Corinna Gordon Brown's talk to you about you, but then it seems that you're the only guy like preaching this kind of things, or is it something that she's coming, or are you alone? Can you?
Oh, I'm definitely not alone for sure. I mean, I could list. Robert Middleton, Corinna Gordon Barnes, Mark Silver, George Cow. I could list a bunch of Ari Galper, who I kind of,
Can I add one that you may not have thought of and you may disagree with? I'd like to add John Morrow. Do you know him?
I don't.
John Morrow runs Boost Blog Traffic, and I always thought he was a slimy salesperson until I met him in April and went on a conference of his. And he was probably one of the most... I've never known anybody so determined to help the people who he works for. But he comes across, because he uses a lot of techniques in terms of copywriting, because he used to be the editor for Copyblogger, etc. He used to work with Brian Clark. And I was so impressed with the guy. And you were talking about before, what he did. He does... every now and then he'll do a webinar, and he'll sell places, and at the end of it, he'll say, this is like $499 and you get an hour of my time or whatever, but you've got to buy it in the next hour. And I used to think, slime, smarm, whatever. But he actually charges $10,000 an hour, and he was doing that just to gather information. He just wanted to question people, where are your pain spots? How can I help? What is the next product I need to deliver or whatever? And he was actually doing it at a loss to gather information, which is something you brought about, what you talked about earlier, is about, if we don't know what our clients, customers, want, then how can we produce solutions to their problems, etc. And I gained a tremendous amount of respect for him, a tremendous amount of respect. So sorry to dive in on you there, Tad, but I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. So I think there are so many people out there. And it's one of those things I feel like that is so tricky, because there are, I would say, a handful of colleagues who I feel like I can endorse 100% without any equivocation. And there are a lot who I can endorse some things and I feel nervous about some things. Like I just had it with one of my colleagues who was doing a thing around sales and kind of having these one-on-one conversations for life coaches to get people to sign up. And I've known him for years. He's a really lovely guy. And he was giving away some free things with it, kind of bonuses to incentivize people to check it out. And I was like, great. And so then I was like, can you send me those free things? Because I'd like to read them before I endorse them. And the first one was just about how to get people to say yes. But it was basically a sales letter for the program. It wasn't an ebook that delivered, in my experience, much value the way it was written. So then I was like, And then he had another one about how to, sort of the big 5 objections to overcome. And I read it, and there was some really smart stuff in it. And I felt like the place it was coming from was not acknowledging that maybe it's a fit, maybe it's not. I just thought there were a lot of pieces missing that I would have needed to feel comfortable. And so I ended up not endorsing it. And so there's a lot of that, and there's just a lot of digging to do, and I'm sure for me still there's a lot of learning and unlearning to do, because what we're really on about is how do we, as human beings, reconstitute something that might look a little more like a village and less like a crass marketplace that is hijacking people's vulnerabilities for selfish gain. How do we rebuild some sort of sense of community where people are really cared for and people's needs are met? And how do we relate to each other in a way that is faithful to the tremendous gift that it is to be in another person's presence and to be witness to their vulnerabilities at all. So to me, it's a big question about what does it mean to be human with each other in this time, and how do we build the structures and systems and the marketplace? Because in order to do that. So so to me, it's all big questions, and I think there's going to be a lot of learning and unlearning for all of us who are a product of this civilization, who've grown up socialized to take advantage of other people and to just look out for our own best interests. So, I don't know. I'm just like anybody. I'm just sort of on the journey trying to figure out how do we do it? How do we do this in a way that we meet our own needs without imperiling the needs of others and the needs of future generations?
Well, that's actually inspiring. So thank you for being here, Tad, because I think you have a client in 5 minutes, Tim, so I think we will have to, unfortunately, stop the recording right now.
You didn't have to say that.
No, I need to mention it's your fault that we're stopping, because it was extremely interesting, and I was wanting to pursue this. How can we change the world to a better place, knowing that it's yesterday was the Earth Overshoot Day.
I'll tell you what would be so cool would be to get Tad and Mark on at the same time.
Oh yes, let's do it.
Do you want to have Mark as well? Okay, yeah.
That would be fantastic, because as I said before, Mark, Tad, I hope you forgive me for saying this, and it may be a bit sloppy or whatever, but I would love to dedicate this podcast to your grandfather, and I'm sorry about your loss, and we really appreciate you coming on in such a time. So you may be cringing at me saying that, but thank you very much.
Thank you. No, you do a lot of honor to my grandfather in saying that, and to everyone that he came from and everything that gave him life, And no, I think we did good here. I think we created a little bit of something beautiful that can feed something bigger than us. So I think we did good.
And I, for one, would love to have you and Mark on the same program. It would be fun. Me and Mark had an entire Twitter conversation about celery and Brussels sprouts. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know about. Because I was saying I love celery, and it's just like this. We had this, and he is a lovely guy. I really do have a lot of respect for Mark. So, and yourself, by the way, even if I was cursing you 5 minutes before you came on, because I said he's not going to turn up. He's not going to turn up. Thank you very much, Tad. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care of you.
I will contact you later.
Take care.
I'll
well.
you.
Please save the file. Thank you.
Yeah, save the file.